Okay, welcome to this last Equip for Life preview webinar. I know there's kind of this awkward period for the first minute or so as kind of people are getting loaded on. Sometimes it takes people like 30, 45 seconds for even the video to start loading. But meanwhile, there's people watching replay right now, watching the awkward process as I kind of kill time just a little bit, trying to give people a chance to get on. I'm expecting not a lot of people in today like asking questions because I didn't really make this webinar public. We did a big one of these a while back, and I've just done a few others really just for the sake of the Students for Life club leaders who have been at the leadership summits that Tim and I have been speaking at. So this last 3 weeks or so, we've been at leadership summits in, let's see, DC, Kentucky, New York, North Carolina. I think that's the full list. And so just we had done the last of these webinars as roughly identical. Before that, I was kind of wanted to give, if there's club leaders that are thinking about getting the course, either for this semester or for next semester, that just want to get a sense of what is it like, what is the quality of it, what do we cover. We're going to be talking about that today. So if you jump in, feel free to kind of say where you're from and say hello in the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on that. I'm going to kill time just a little bit as I kind of give people a chance to jump in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we are doing kind of in this webinar, and then we're going to get started before long because I don't want you having to just wait a long time. That gets awkward. So anyway, what I'm planning on doing is we've got about 48 minutes of course material that I'm going to play for you. If you were at Leadership Summits, which I'm guessing just about everyone who jumps on probably were at one of these Leadership Summits because we didn't really tell. I think I did like one Facebook post. But if you were if you were at one of those leadership summits where we did like an hour and a half of apologetics training, none of the videos we're showing were covered in that apologetics training. So I kind of really purposely want to make sure that if you're on the webinar, if you're giving us an hour and a half of your time, that I'm adding value to you. Even if you don't get the course, it's totally fine. You will leave having watched 48 minutes of hopefully awesome, helpful pro-life material. And then I'll do Q&A afterwards. I'll do a quick pitch for the course after playing the videos. It'll be in about an hour. We'll have watched all the videos, and I'll tell you a little bit about the course. I'll give you a quick, really quick tour of the website so you've got a sense of what all you get if you buy the course. I'm going to make a couple of exclusive offers for anyone who buys the course basically in the next day. You get a couple of extra special things, and then I'll basically take questions until we run out of time. So if you've got questions, definitely glad to answer. That's kind of part of what you get for jumping on the webinar, especially as was one of the benefits of being on live, is for the people watching the replay tomorrow. I'm sorry, we weren't here, so I can't answer your questions, but you'll be able to watch me answer whatever questions come in. So Cassie is here from Michigan. Hello, Cassie, and I hope you have lots of questions because again, I'm not expecting a big turnout today. This is really something that I just did because I want to make sure that all the Students for Life leaders at the summits that we spoke at recently had a chance to preview the course. So I'm expecting a small turnout and a lot of engagement for the few people that are on here. Glad to answer any questions that you have. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the course that I'm going to be showing videos from, and then I'm just going to roll into the first video. So we started, just a quick background. We started Equal Rights Institute almost 3 years ago. Well, it was really 2.5 years ago, but in my head it feels like 3 years ago because 3 years ago, at the very end of the year, my brother Tim and I, Tim, if you don't know Tim, is a philosophy grad from Biola University, and we got together because we had wanted to work on our first book. And so I'd rented this conference room. We had a conference table and our laptops, and I'd swiped a marker board from my work. And we were going to try to bang out a draft of a first book and maybe the proposal. And we worked on that for a while. We had about a week. We worked on it for half a day, and then we just started talking about the pro-life movement. And we made this kind of observation that would end up changing our lives, which is that the pro-life movement is not known for its love. That's not good. And then we thought, well, we're not really known for being a thoughtful group of people either, and that's really not good. So if we don't have both those things, it's gonna just that makes it really hard to change culture. And so we kind of just started thinking, like, what could we do to try to help with that? Not try to solve all the problems in the pro-life movement, or try to do everything in the pro-life movement. I'm so glad there's PRCs out there. I'm so glad there's awesome lobbyists out there and sidewalk counselors. Like, we need all of that. What can we do to help? I think we were really, really good at dialogue. Tim and I have gone through the fire of about 3,000 conversations with pro-choice people, and we're pretty analytical about that, and we try to figure out what's working and what's not working. But basically, we created a flexible and innovative pro-life apologetics organization because we felt like there was a lot of need for that. So like 20 years from now, we won't be teaching the same material, because most likely we'll have figured out material in 20 years that is more helpful to the pro-choice people that we're talking to at that point. Pro-choice college students right now are different than they were 5 years ago. So the way we talk to them is different. The arguments that we make are different, because we're always constantly trying to figure out what is going to be the most persuasive. We want to see more people become pro-life. That's the point of our conversations. And so we created that. And then not long after, I was thinking about this problem that we would need to solve, which is that we formed a really good relationship with Students for Life of America. We like them a lot because we want to work with college students and high school students more than anybody else. Part of what I want to do is train the next generation of pro-life leaders. This is a long game for me. And what if in 20, 30 years, all the pro-life leaders in the movement had gone through a training that had taught them not only the best arguments, but also like how to, this is going to be just a little bit religious for just a minute, but like in my head as a Christian, I think like what if the pro-life movement was more like Jesus? What would it be like if Jesus talked to a pro-choice person? What would his body language be like? What kinds of questions would he ask? What kinds of questions would he not ask? What would it sound like when he made arguments that are grounded in truth? Like, we're not holding back from truth, but are spoken with grace and gentleness. Like, what would that be like? So that's kind of, I want the pro-life movement to get closer to that mark. And so the problem was Students for Life starts these clubs. It's awesome. I don't want to start clubs. I'm so glad they do that. They're doing that work, and they're awesome at it. I love the regional coordinators. We work a lot with them, and I train their staff. I've trained their staff every year for the last four summers, basically. Their staff goes through a training so they can go out there and be more effective when they do trainings in apologetics. So here's the problem. We would go out, the old way was go out and we would train people in a local seminar. As we spend like all day doing a seminar, and it's awesome. And we would, have like speaking kind of sections, and then we'd mentor people in groups and get them role playing and dialoguing and practicing, and we're mentoring them. And it's like the best way to train people. And then we take them out to outreach, the next day, and we spend 1 or 2 days on campus doing outreach. And, the students are watching us have our dialogue, so they can kind of see the stuff that's, as a friend of mine once said, caught but not taught. Like, there's just certain things you can't cover even in a 7-hour seminar. And then we watch them and give them feedback on what you're doing really well, what you could work on a little bit, and it's a fantastic, there's no better way to train people in dialogue. The problem is it's not scalable. Students for Life has something like 1,000 clubs right now. And I want to train at least 75% of them. Like, that's like the somewhat, but not too arbitrary number in my head that would make me happy. Because I'm trying to train the next generation of future pro-life leaders. So like 50% of them doesn't feel like that's enough. Like, it's not a good enough chance to get like most of the leaders. I think that a lot of the pro-life leaders are going to go through these clubs. And we can help so much with the dialogues that are going right now on campuses and change culture. And so if we want to get to at least 750 clubs and train them, well, it can't be because Tim and I and Jacob and any other staff members that join up in the future are flying to places and training 2 clubs at a time. It's not going to work. So we created a video course. It's not brilliant. It's not that innovative. I took the best stuff that I saw in online courses, not from like the pro-life movement, but from like out in the world, the secular online courses. And we spent about a year working on something where we could take like what we taught in the seminar and more, and put it into something where we could make it so that a club could sort of train themselves in a sense. It's not as good as having us there locally, but at least if, theoretically all the clubs could do it. So that's what we did. We started this last February. We started in 4K in a professional studio. It looks really good. I'm really, really proud of it. There's 29 lessons that you get as part of the course that are video, and then you get the audio. And I'll walk through all that later. So I think what I want to do is just start showing you stuff. So the first video I'm going to show you is from the first module. There's 9 modules. It's kind of 9. Think of a module as like a group of lessons. Most modules have, somewhere between 3 and 8 lessons, outside of like a few short exceptions. And in the first module was kind of like, before we start getting into like teaching people arguments, we wanted to talk about kind of habits to avoid. So we call these habits of highly ineffective pro-lifers. It's a little tongue in cheek, but it's kind of like attitudes to avoid. Things that like let's put first things first. If you can avoid these things, we think that you'll be far more effective. But it doesn't really belong in the category of dialogue tips or arguments. It's more attitudes and habits. So anyway, this is literally the first lesson of the course. And it's on the subject of open-mindedness, which is one of the more controversial things that we talk about sometimes with pro-life people. And so I'll let you watch. I think it's about a 9-minute video, and then I'll come back and introduce the second video. I'm going to show you 4 altogether, and then after that, I'll show you the website real quick and kind of jump into Q&A. Okay, and I don't know what to say when the video ends. I can like welcome back. Like that seems weird. Whatever. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, like it all sucks. If you have an idea, put it in the chat box. I'm just gonna tell you about the next video. So the second module is on practical dialogue tips. This is something that I've always been really into the nitty gritty practical stuff. Like just kind of what are the things that we've learned that like aren't arguments, but are just like things that help conversations go better. Things like body language, how to do questions well, how to find common ground well, things that you can say or add that just bring like clarity to a conversation, things like that. And so this video is one of my favorite from the course. It's about 13 minutes long. This is a topic. It's kind of interesting. This is really unique to us. This is an area you'll hear me say in the video, I think at least twice. Like it's an area of respectful disagreement with some of our colleagues in Christian and pro-life apologetics. But what is this thing that happened where we were working on our in our seminar and how we wanted to talk about this very common pro-life tool called trotting out the toddler. We have kind of our own ERI, cool way of doing it, but it's not an original like concept to us. And we were talking about like how to train our students to do it. And what ended up happening was all of our staff got on the phone to talk about how do we actually do this when we're out in the real world, if you will, when we're not like training students in the way that we had been trained, how to teach this tool. Like, what do we do when we're just on our own? And what it turned out was all three of us, Jacob, who's our guy in Georgia, who's awesome, and Tim and I had all kind of ended up independently doing roughly the same thing, which is really interesting. So we started thinking about that, and kind of that ended up as we started thinking more about like what it was that we were now doing instead and why, ended up kind of resulting in the creation of this material. It's one of my favorite things to talk about when I do speeches. I love this, and I like that it's unique and it's kind of fun and there's stories, and I'm just going to let you check it out. So this is what we think about the concept of just what are the kinds of questions that maybe people shouldn't ask. Welcome back. Yeah, still dumb. Whatever. Okay. Next video. I want to show you something apologetics, because we have a lot of apologetics in the course. But I didn't. Once again, we didn't want to show anything that we were doing in like our Leadership Summit talks, where we talk a lot about, how to trot a toddler and kind of the best personhood argument that we know of, and kind of some basic bodily rights. And so what I want to do is show you something. This is also one of the I think more unique aspects of our course, is talking about utilitarianism. Sorry. We have come to believe that, well, here's a view that I have. I think that moral relativism is dying a slow death and being replaced by more and more utilitarians. I think that for a few reasons. One is because I think relativism makes far less sense on its face. On almost every professional philosopher has abandoned it. Is pretty self-refuting. Whereas utilitarianism is a view that makes more sense. It's an objective moral worldview, and it gets right answers some of the times. And so what we're going to do is show you is just basically taking the two lessons from this module on utilitarianism and just splice them together into one video. So you're going to see kind of two back-to-back lessons. One is on how to recognize pro-choice utilitarian arguments, and this is pretty hard because this can be really subtle. When pro-choice people are making arguments that are grounded in utilitarianism, they sound a lot like a lot of the arguments they make that are not. And so, like, figuring out what is going on is really tricky. But if you can do that, then we also show you how to respond to utilitarianism. This also gives you a chance to see that I am not the only speaker in the course. So this is my brother Tim, talking about how to recognize utilitarian arguments and how to respond to them. Okay, and the last video I'm going to play you is actually, I think it's my all-time favorite part of the course. Outside of the podcast, I really like the podcast, but like as far as like the lessons itself, this is my favorite thing we did, which was we wanted to talk about how do you help people who are, like if you're doing a college outreach, and someone comes up to you and says they're pregnant and planning on having an abortion. Like that's just a different, or like you should think of it as a different kind of a conversation. Like this is a case where like apologetics and philosophy should kind of take a back seat. It might end up being helpful depending on the person you're talking to, but probably there's some other things that are going to be, like are important in every conversation. We're going to be a lot more important in this situation. Same thing with people who are post-abortive. There's just some other things that we should be keeping in mind. Some other, like tips that we have to offer about how to be helpful to those people. So what we did in this case was instead of having a person talking to the camera, we filmed a roundtable discussion where I interviewed Jacob Nels, who's on our staff also, who I mentioned before. He's awesome. Sidewalk counselor. Well, anyway, I introduced him in the video, so I shouldn't do it here. So it's Jacob and then Missy Stone from Students for Life of America. And so what you're going to see, the roundtable discussion makes for the longest lesson video in the course. It's like 35 minutes long, I think. And what I'm going to show you is just about exactly half of it, just to give you a real sense of some of the things that we talked about, but not all of it. So you'll see like the very beginning of the lesson where I kind of set up the topic and introduce who Jacob and Missy are, so you can learn a little bit more about them. And then I'm going to cut to about halfway through the video where you can kind of hear the last couple of tips. You can hear one of Jacob's awesome stories. He's like literally the best storyteller. I know, like, he makes me better at telling funny stories to my kids, just like watching him work. He's incredible at that. So you kind of get a sense of some of the things that we have to say about that. And then when we come back, I'll give you a quick tour of the website, give you a sense of what the course is like, and then take questions. So I hope you're thinking of questions if you want there to be a Q&A time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and roll about half of the lesson on being helpful to people who are post-abortive or abortion-minded. Okay, so what I want to do is give you a quick peek at like a tour, if you will, of the course website, so you kind of see what you get if you end up buying the course. And then we'll take questions if you have questions. I'm looking for the right, see if this works. Okay. So this is the welcome page when you log in. One of the cool things or things that I'm really happy that we did was we made it so that you can download all of the audios from the course videos onto your phone. I know this makes it a lot easier to rip off our course, and I don't care. A lot of our students or people like to listen to the lessons like multiple times, and they like to listen to them while they're walking around on campus or driving cars. So we make that available, and we make it in one big zip file. Like technically under any video you can download the individual MP3, but I try to make it really easy and just put everything in one big zip file. You can just stick everything on your phone at once. The modules page is kind of the meat of the website, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through briefly what the lessons are, so you have an idea of what all we talk about. We talk about, so the first module is habits of highly ineffective pro-lifers. You saw the closed-mindedness video. We talk about why it's not good to embrace confirmation bias. These are the habits of highly ineffective. So embracing confirmation bias would be a habit of a highly ineffective pro-lifer. Interpreting opposing arguments uncharitably. Speaking disparagingly of people. We talk about how our mental habits affect our outward behavior. We talk about fetus tunnel vision, something that we've been talking about for years, and something that I think is finally starting to get better, which I'm very happy about. And we also talk about having the wrong priorities in a conversation. And in the practical dialogue tips module, there's 8 of these. We talk about body language. We talk about asking good clarification questions. You saw the lesson 2.3, don't make arguments with question marks. We also talk about how to listen to understand, not merely to refute. We talk about rephrasing what people said. That really helps bring clarity into the conversation. Talk about finding genuine common ground, something that we call filler sentences, and this other kind of dialogue tip that seems to also adds a lot of clarity to our conversations. The Students for Life Club at University of Michigan, after their club had just gone through the first 2 modules, they were begging for weekly outreaches. And the most timid members were going up to and like willing to talk to like scary philosophy people, not because they'd watched the philosophy parts of the course, but just from the practical dialogue tip stuff. Like they really felt empowered, so that's pretty cool. The next module is on toddler. As I said before, this isn't like new to the pro-life movement, although we have a very particular approach that kind of more mimics the kind of more just like our voice, our style, which is very emphasizing authenticity, which I think helps us to connect to at least younger pro-choice people better. So we talk about that. We give some examples like how to respond to people who say like, you're a man, she's gonna be able to talk about it, or back alley abortions. We also talk about how to respond to the person who says the toddler is like a false analogy, because if you, like in the case of the toddler, you can just adopt out the toddler, you can't just adopt out the unborn child. So we have a response to that objection. We talk about defending the biological case for the unborn. These first 2 lessons aren't that original. We teach this pretty similarly to the way Justice for All teaches it. There's kind of a soundbite version, and there's also more evidence that we offer for people on that who are arguing that the unborn is not a living human organism. This is pretty unique to us, though. It's kind of a way to respond to, in my mind, kind of what I call the eternal skeptic, like the person who just keeps on saying, what do you know? How do you know? How do you know? How do you know? No matter what you say, because it seems like people think they can win Facebook debates that way these days. So how to make an appropriate appeal to scientific authority in response to that person. Philosophical case for the unborn. This is where we talk about something that I've sometimes called the most undervalued argument in the pro-life movement, because one of the things that we started trying several years ago was this philosophy argument we heard from Dr. J.P. Moreland that my brother Tim and Steve Wagner spent a lot of time modifying for campus. I've never seen any argument change more minds than this. It's really these 2 things put together go into that. I see this change a lot of minds about abortion. So we talk about that. Talk about how to respond to the question of rape with truth and compassion. I get kind of frustrated watching pro-life people respond to rape, because I think a lot of times they get that fetus tunnel vision problem. I think there is a way to talk about this that shows that you care about rape survivors, but you're still not holding back from the truth. You can still argue that abortion should be against the law in the case of rape. We talk about kind of how we explain that to people in a way that they can hear it. Bodily rights arguments. I think this is where a lot of pro-choice people really are, or at least the most fundamental thing that's going on in their arguments. So we talk about how to understand what pro-choice people really mean. There's two different versions of bodily rights arguments. We talk about both, and then we respond to both: the sovereign zone argument and the right to refuse argument. We mark a few of these lessons as advanced for the students who are a little bit more gun shy from advanced stuff, although I showed you two of the advanced lessons today. So hopefully you saw, like, it's not super advanced. So you don't have to be like a philosophy student or something to understand this stuff. But then once again, the next module is the greater good. You saw both of these today, and then the full module 9, talking to abortion-minded and post-abortive people, is about 35 minutes long, that roundtable discussion. If you click on any of these lessons, you see something like this. You'll see the video, which you can stream right here. You can't download the video version, but you can download the MP3. There's also a group activities PDF for all of these. These will have sometimes really good discussion questions that your group can go through together, or role play dialogues. I think people that go through this training as a group have a better experience. There's a lot of individuals taking their course. It's awesome, but this is like custom designed for Students for Life clubs. Felt like there's something else I was going to say about that, and I don't remember what it was anymore, so it's okay. I'll move on. The podcast we put out every other Tuesday. So far there's like 8. We're about to actually record the next one in a couple of days. But the first 3, we thought this was going to be one episode and then it turned into 3. What do you do when people bite the bullet? So people who kind of say like, all right, infanticide is, maybe it's infanticide's okay. Or there is no objective truth, so even like rape's not objectively wrong. Like people who bite really tough bullets, how do you deal with people like that? And ultimately, how do you graciously end conversations with people that you just can't find any common ground with? So we give a lot of the reason it took several hours was we wanted to talk about specifically how we respond to lots of different examples of this. So you get like general principles, specific examples, and how do you graciously end conversations. We did a podcast that we called Taking the Training Wheels Off, which is kind of like going more advanced on how to respond to the issue of rape. That episode is on more on our views on shifting the burden of proof and why you should try to avoid doing that when possible. We talked about the problems with results-based reasoning in episode 6. That would be hard to summarize just now, so I'm just going to move on. I think it's easily the most groundbreaking episode. Like I now think about this just about every day, this concept, and it's a thing that a lot of pro-life people I think get wrong. So that's helpful. Episode 7 is primarily an interview that I did with someone from Abortion Pill Reversal. They figured out that there's a way that if women take the first abortion pill and then they have regrets, that if you get them to the right resources in time, you might be able to, their baby could be saved. So this is kind of the info that I feel like every pro-life person who's talking to pro-choice people should know about that. And kind of where to send people if they've got resources. And then episode 8 turned into a post-election response, and kind of, so you've got 2 #NeverTrump people and a person who begrudgingly voted for Trump, all in a room discussing this very divisive topic, and kind of some practical tips for pro-life people who are going to be talking to pro-choice people who are very upset about Trump. And how to deal with that, as well as pro-life people who the pro-life movement is fairly divided right now about Trump. And so we talk about both of those things. And then we put these out every other Tuesday. So on December 6th, we'll put out an episode where we're going to be answering questions from. So it was part of the things one of the things we wanted to do with the podcast was answer your questions. And so there's a members only forum, for example. And so this is one of the ways that we answer questions on that. If you click on any of these, it looks kind of like this. You can stream, if you're not super tech savvy, you can just stream the podcast right there. A surprising amount of people do this. You can also, of course, download the audio MP3 and just, drag and drop it onto your iPhone with iTunes or whatever your smartphone is. And sometimes we'll also have like a deleted scene. This is like if you don't want to hear the full like 8-minute debate that Tim and Jacob ended up getting about like who's the true villain of Karate Kid. Like not really on topic, but it's fun. If you like kind of our personalities and you like some fun stuff mixed in with your pro-life philosophy discussion, a little bit of that tends to happen in the podcast, but if it goes too long, I've been putting it in like deleted scenes, so sometimes you'll have that too. Sometimes there'll also be like resources here, like other websites or blog articles or things to go deeper, just depending on the episode. So that's it. So here's what I'm going to do now is like I'm almost ready to do Q&A, and so I'll just tell you, Cassie, you're the only one on the webinar because everyone else clearly is planning on watching tomorrow. So if you have questions, you better start coming up with them quick. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, and I'll be ready to do that in just a minute. Let me tell you basically what I'm offering in the next day. If anyone who watches this, either today, or just you, Cassie, or tomorrow, when the rest of you watch this, the offer is if you buy any membership of the course before the end of tomorrow, so if you watch the replay at the end of tonight, then you're going to get 25% off. This is the same deal that we had on Cyber Monday. Most of these other webinars have only offered 10% off. I just kind of felt like Cyber Monday was yesterday. Like it just feels bad to go back to 10%. So 25% off. And before I was only offering that on the group memberships because I feel like the individual membership at $39 is like super cheap for everything that we're offering. Any of these memberships they basically last for a year. You get access to everything on this website for a year. So the podcasts are going to keep on coming out. Eventually, we're going to extend the course. Also, you've got access to the forum and can be asking other students questions and things like that. It's a lot more likely we'll be able to do outreach with you if you take the course. We don't guarantee that everyone who takes the course, every club who takes the course, we can do outreach with. It's not scalable, but certainly you're a lot more likely that we could do some outreach with you. But we're pretty much only going to be doing outreach with clubs who take the course because then we don't have to go through an all-day training seminar that's expensive for us and really time-consuming to plan. So any membership, if you go to equippedcourse.com, you'll see if you scroll down past the stuff about how awesome the course is, you'll see 3 options. There's a individual membership, a group of 20 membership, and a group of 40. And in those cases, what happens is we send you a coupon code within a day or two that you can kind of spread out to the rest of your members, and then they can get the course for free. So you put the money down, maybe you collect money from them later, or you fundraise for it or whatever. But you put the money down and everyone else is going to get in for free if they use the membership, the coupon code that we make just for your club. It's like an exclusive code that you guys use. So we explain all that to you. That's 25% off if you get in the next basically 26 hours from when we're making this. So this is Tuesday. So by the end of Wednesday, this week, that will be over. And then the other offer is if you also buy the course within that time, you also get a 30-minute call with me. If you have questions or anything that you want to discuss, it's been really fun doing this for people who, from the last webinars who've bought the course. It's fun to get to know people who are following our stuff or excited about our stuff. And those calls, there's no agenda from me. It's not like there's some other like extra new pitch or something like that. Like I'm like, whatever you want to do with that time. And so for some people that's been wanting to get thoughts on how adults can do outreach. And I've talked to people about so many different things. And so how to deal with pro-life disunity and how to do more stuff with like, Catholic Church pro-life clubs. Like there's lots of different things that have come up, or like apologetic stuff. That's also like, I can't, once again, it's one of those things that's not scalable. I can't offer that to every single person who buys the course. But if you jumped on the webinar, you spent some time with us, checking it out, that offer applies to you. So that's it. That's my pitch. But if you don't get the course, then at least I'm glad, hopefully you got some value out of watching the videos that I showed you. Cassie, if you have any questions, this is the time. I've said all the things I wanted to say, and we've done all the things I wanted to do except Q&A. And so if you have questions, it's going to be kind of a going once, going twice thing happening here pretty soon. So I'm going to make sure that I'm seeing everything that's in the chat box. Yeah, I'm seeing it. So I know you're still on. And if you've got a question, I'm going to give you like a minute to get something up there, because otherwise this is going to be like a long, awkward thing for anyone who watches the replay tomorrow. Again, I purposely kind of wanted to keep this small just for, you know, a few people, especially like Students for Life Club leaders from the last several leadership summits. So glad to do this, but if you don't have any questions, then I'm going to be signing off. I'm giving you 30 seconds. Like, I say this, if you've got no questions, then just tell me that. Or if you're like trying to type a long question, tell me that. So I kind of know what to do here. Because I'm going to feel bad if I sign off and end this thing, and you're like in the middle, like, no! Like if you're typing this long, nuanced question, then I'm going to feel bad. So I'm not sure what to do here. This is so much easier. When we did the first webinar, there's like, I feel like we had like 50 or 60 people on, I think. Like we actually like tried to kind of make that open for everybody. That was easy because lots of people had questions. This is like, okay, Cassie says, hello. You have a question. This is so awkward, or I feel really awkward. I don't know how you feel. I feel really awkward. It's okay. If you have a question, you're going to want to type it in the chat box. Anything apologetics related, or anything about the course, or ERI, or Trump, or whatever. Personhood versus incrementalism, graphic pictures. What are all the controversial topics we could throw out? Oh, you're experiencing Michigan lag. You didn't catch all of the webinar. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, well, yeah, so basically I've played all the videos. You could, you might try watching the webinar, I'm sorry, the replay later if you miss some of it. I don't know if you'll want to do that. But Cassie, you're the, oh gosh. So, okay, so poor Cassie, our one viewer, is having major lag. Okay, I totally understand how that goes. Is Michigan lag? Is Michigan like is Michigan known for a lot of lag? That's okay. Cassie, if you've got questions that we couldn't get to, feel free, just email me. It's really easy. Well, I'm actually gonna type my email address in here in case you're not even getting all this. But it's josh@equalrightsinstitute.com. If you want to email me questions later, I guess since I'm planning to buy your offer, is all the information we discussed tonight on there. Yeah, so I'm actually like typing in my response. Yeah, yes, all of the information is on the course. Just go to equipped, so fast I can type, course.com in the next 24 hours, and you'll get all of the offers I talked about, which is 25% off if you use the coupon code webinar. I don't think I said that earlier. And we'll schedule a 30-minute call with me if you want it. Okay, I'm gonna call it. So Cassie, feel free to email me any questions you have or anything else if I didn't cover it, or if you missed some stuff because of the lag. I feel really bad. Don't worry, I'll make sure that if you've got to get it tomorrow or whatever, like all the stuff I talked about, I'll make sure that we'll honor those offers for you, even if you've got some kind of a internet issue. So thanks for joining us. If you're watching the replay, thanks for joining us. Again, I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that you'll find this course to be really helpful to you and your pro-life club. We really want to see. Sorry about my possibly late response. I suppose you can expect a race call from me at some point. Sounds good, and no problem. What was I going to say? I had this like, I was going to say, I'm really hoping that the result of this course for you and or a club is going to be not just that you're more confident in your pro-life beliefs, but that you're actually more motivated, that you feel empowered to actually talk to pro-choice people. That's what we want. That's what we care about. We want to see more conversations with pro-choice people, and good conversations, productive conversations, the kind where people change their mind, or at least begin to really the kind of relationship where minds can change down the road. So I hope that you'll find that. And thanks again for joining. And now I'm going to sign off. God bless.